Today we are discussing something in relationship to what we call youth participation in politics. Comrades, wherever you are, you can concur with me that youths have turned out to be tools that politicians use at different levels. And the cry for the youth at the end of it all has always stayed the same. It doesn't change. But also at the same time, we also wonder where the youth land. At the end of the day, they come out to say, we were just youth. We were just being used by these political guys. And after they made it through, we became irrelevant to them. They forgot about us. The manifestos have us in, but at the end of the day, the implementation totally goes the opposite. Today, I am joined by a guest who happens to be the Executive Director of Genocide and Atrocity Prevention Support, GAPS, Uganda, and of course, he's none other than Dr. Ashad Sentongo. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Feel free to greet the viewers.
Good. Good morning, viewers, and nice to be speaking to you this morning.
Your names, details, and where you actually work?
Dr. Ashad Sentongo. I'm the Executive Director for the Genocide and Atrocity Prevention Support, in short. It's GAPS Uganda. Mm-hmm. We are located in Kololo, and we focus on issues of violence prevention. Currently, we are undertaking, concluding a research with support from the IDRC in Canada on prevention of youth participation in violence.
I would like to ask, how long have you actually been in existence as GAP, and what other things have you been doing in the background?
We have done some prevention work, working with the governments in the Great Lakes region, ICJLR, East Africa Community, to establish and to support the establishment of NGOs to prevent what happened in Rwanda in 1994. So we have been focusing on making sure we look at policies, government programs, security reforms, areas, and so on, to make sure that we don't get a recurrence in the Great Lakes region of what happened in Rwanda in 1994, or what is going on in the DRC, or what happened in 1972, or what is happening in South Sudan.
I would like to ask you on the same related note. Doctor, you've been in this country. Doctor, you've been in East Africa. Doctor, you follow the politics of Africa. In the recent time, we have actually had journalists coming out to throw statements of tribalistic related angle. And of course, the RRSS actually made. We have had comedians actually come out from the comical industry to actually make fun of the tribalistic related stories across it. Don't you think over time, Uganda is likely to plunge into what we call a genocide?
Every country in the world is prone to genocide. It's the processes and how the hostilities and the grievances evolve and they are managed over time.
Yesterday we had actually the president coming out to respond to those who have been speaking about tribalism, and of course he decided to go on his Facebook account and he listed a number of people actually who are working actually close to State House, whom he said only one Munyankole, or only one maybe someone from Kitarara, only one ABCD, and he came out to say that whoever is talking about the army being dominated by people from the West should actually remove that rubbish. You know, he uses those words of idiots, rubbish, and across. But then, journalist Ali Ruan actually, from a particular media house that I don't name, actually moved out to analyze and say, when you look at the Ugandan government, it's actually made up of from only the West. You find actually someone heading prisons is actually Biabashaija. You find someone actually who is running Uganda police force is actually a man by the names of Sabiti. You find someone actually in UNRWA is actually Alan Kajina. Okay, the list is very long. I don't want to re-paraphrase it. Don't you think this is so inciting to the country? And don't you see a rise of such a related situation happening here?
The question of state and the tribe was not managed well in the process of state formation across Africa. It's a difficult conversation that has to be taken. When do you emphasize the state and de-emphasize the tribe? Mamdani wrote a book, Citizen and Subject, and in there he talks about the need to, he says, to solve the democracy impasse in Africa, you need to de-ethnicize the state and de-ethnicize the civil service, de-tribalize the state.
Okay.
He doesn't say how, but I think he said the right statement, is that the way the state has been managed, we live in very ethnically organized state. The sense of tribe, research by Afrobarometer a few years ago proved that in Uganda, over 90% of people prefer to call themselves by their tribe instead of being called Ugandans. Why? Because the state was not constructed as this overarching, inclusive arrangement.
Okay, I believe when we're talking about state, tribe, clan, we'll actually spend a whole year discussing, because Africa is still far away, still thinking about tribe. Well, actually, other continents like the United States, the other side of Europe, stand and they say, we are the United States. We are Canada. They call themselves by their nation. Okay, getting back to our topic of discussion today, what are some of the key drivers of youth participation in politics?
One of them has been exactly that history. The perception of a historical pattern of exclusion by some. So many of the youth have grown up under that perception that we are the excluded. And the state has not opened the space for that conversation to take place constructively to find solutions. Instead, they have tried to suppress it, arrest and create laws. Don't talk about tribe, don't talk. There's nothing wrong with the tribe. What makes the tribe wrong is using it to deny me. There's nothing wrong with being a Muganda or a Munyankole. So what?
Are you trying to say that the state is in panic, that they have actually opted to use rudimentary rudimentary strategies to actually suppress the reality that has to be faced?
You cannot suppress a conversation about tribe. You simply have to open the space to talk about it and find solutions.
Do you think the state is afraid?
If it doesn't have the capacity to hold the debate, then it has reason to be.
Do you think the state is afraid?
If it doesn't have the capacity to hold the discussion, then it is.
Okay.
Because every time we have had huge turmoil in Uganda, you should look at the level of ethnic mobilization. They escalate.
True.
So if there are levels of ethnic mobilization that are escalating, then there is reason to worry for everyone, not only the state.
Actually,
but the youth then fall into that historically. That's number one.
They find themselves there
historically. They find themselves caught into that debate, into that perception that is transgenerationally passed on to them by those who preceded them and telling them we are excluded. The other one is the question of political entrepreneurship. There are many political candidates that are actually not there for the agenda, but for the entrepreneurship part of it. And we can call it political entrepreneurship. Going on to create winning political constituencies, not necessarily against an agenda that benefits the country, but to win an election. You get it? That is also one reason for youth mobilization to participate in violence. The third one is that they are really, if you have the youth as 75% of the population, you must know that they are shared unique needs for that population that need to be addressed. And the youth of today are not the youth of 10 years ago, 20. They cannot just be followers. They have been exposed, they have been educated, they can define and say, I want to do this course in Makerere, and from here I want this job. You get it? They cannot no longer follow into the footsteps or the vision or the interest of a leader per se. They also carry very unique interests. The youth in Uganda find these missing into the existing policies and programs of government. And therefore they become very easy for mobilization. The research we have conducted with IDRC has revealed that the youth actually are not often interested in participation in violence or political mobilization. No. Research is proving that actually you only have approximately 5% of youth who participate in what you call violence. Majority of them don't. Why? And what do you do for the other majority? Because you only have 5% participating in demonstrations, robberies, crime, and so on, but you have over 90% of the youth population in Uganda not participating and very peacefully waiting for programs to take place. What do you do with those people? And how are they managing? What are their coping mechanisms? What is it that drives them from participating in violence? Our research is proving that these are people who are focused on self-advancement. Majority of the youth you see walking in the streets are focused on self-advancement. Only that youth in Uganda talk about self-advancement at a personal and family level. They never talk about it at a country level. Because the sense of nation and belonging to the state is still weak across the state. So we believe that programs that should focus on the youth, and we have been established, should focus on self-advancement of the youth. So the political agendas that are happening now must contain agendas around which the youth can define themselves as productive participants in government, in managing their own affairs, and not receivers of handouts and you get what I mean? You know, we had a discussion about poverty alleviation, you know, programs under the youth policy. And you see, poverty alleviation is an acceptance of failure. You know that?
Yes.
Everything you do in government must contribute to two things: production of wealth and protection of that wealth and the people. You get it? Yeah. Whether it is education, whether it is health, whether it is transport, whether it is foreign affairs, everything must converge at two:
creation of wealth and protection.
The moment you take it out of government and you create an office on Kampala Road to focus on poverty alleviation, then you are saying everything else has failed. The youth are finding themselves within that, looking at government as a failed arrangement and moving towards creating their own wealth, you know, and on their own, and not trusting government. And yet it is supposed to be the reverse. That you are supposed to know that the Ministry of Health is functioning because it's keeping me healthy to be able to create my own wealth.
Doctor, to pick up from there, what are the opportunities that can be created to prevent youth participation in politics or in violence?
One,
because according to your statement, you said the research shows that less than 5% are actually interested in this violence.
Yes.
But according to the government, they look at it in this angle like the youth are naturally rebellious and they're interested in war.
No. And that research is across the world, actually. But there's a tendency. You see, violence is sexy. It's attractive.
It's nice.
It's nice. It attracts big money.
When you make some noise and
you look at the military-industrial complex in the United States, it's the biggest budget, and you know why? Because we are fighting terrorists. How many? So what happens to the majority of that? You know, that is why Thomas Kuhn came up with the concept paradigm shift. The idea is that if we really fail, if we find anomalies existing in a mental construct. It is time to shift. I think we need a paradigm shift in the way we think about youth participation in politics. One, we need to engage those that have demonstrated resilience, good relationships, non-violent approaches to the same issues that are influencing others to be violent. Bring them into the discussion.
Ask them why.
Why?
Ask them what can be done.
What can be done peacefully. They are very rational calculators. People think that the youth are rogues, misguided. No. They calculate. They know there are opportunities that so and so is there. Let's go make noise. Only to show discontent. But they know they are not going to get much.
True.
So that's what I'm saying, that we need to engage the non-violent youth majority into this country and bring them into a conversation on what can be done about the country. That's number one. Number two, we need to it is time for people thinking about manifestos to include a clear manpower plan for the country, to demonstrate to the youth how they are going to be absorbed into the political programs or economic programs you are suggesting for the country. When Besigye recommended to abolish taxes, those taxes.
These are where our grandfathers used to run.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Those taxes, and then demonstrated how else the Uganda can form. I think that was a good approach. The NRM also has very good principles on the youth. The devil has always been in the details. How do you operationalize them? But the biggest shortfall in all cases is that the youth don't want to appear to be dictated to. They feel they want to be part of the agenda, shaping it and controlling it. Because you are talking to 75% of your population. Really, you cannot sit there and you say you are thinking for them. So the opportunities that could be created are participatory opportunities, not only in terms of policies, but even defining these agendas, the so-called political manifestos that they are going to use. You need a strong youth presence, but don't be driven by those that are violent. Be guided by those that are non-violent, because they constitute the majority. They provide the recruitment ground for those that are violent. And finally, also, is that we need to redefine security.
You mean we are not picking it in the right context?
We need to step away from the mechanical paradigm of thinking that I've worked with defense in some areas, so I know what I'm talking about. And I'm not criticizing, but I'm simply saying that for half a century, we have approached a very hardcore approach to dealing with the youth problems and uprisings. Is there a way that we can demystify that? Okay? And think about security simply as a creation of an environment where individuals, groups, and communities can satisfy their basic needs predictably, knowing that this will be the same today and tomorrow. You get what I mean?
Sure.
Within that paradigm, within that puzzle, the police and the military have a very small percentage to contribute. The largest percentage is actually made through relationships, through systems of governance, through participatory and inclusive decision making.
I would like to say that to all those who are catching us, feel free to follow the conversation on our social media pages. That is Facebook, Record TV Uganda, Twitter, Record TV Uganda, and YouTube, Record TV Uganda. Today we are discussing about youth agenda in politics, and of course not forgetting that we are narrowing it to this particular issue of youth participation. And of course very many people across Africa have understood it in this context that wherever youth are, it is something else. They always attribute you to violence, to not being serious, to people who are not serious and not ready for agriculture. We have actually had politicians coming out to say, some of you are involved in these riots and being used. Instead of going back to the village to dig When we get you, we will lock you in. Is that the right strategy? Is that the right approach? Are there no other better ways? I've always heard actually from my mother that each time a kid cries, it doesn't mean that kid is actually disobedient if it's a baby. It means there's something that is making that kid uncomfortable. Either wants to help him or herself, or at the same time, maybe it's feeling heat. So you as a parent, you must actually move deep down to understand what the problem is. You don't start pinching because you feel the kid is so disobedient. I would like to throw it back to Doctor. What are your last remarks in relationship to youth participation as we actually wind up in the next 1 minute?
I think the final remarks that we must demonstrate and build capacities to be very resilient, both as a state, but also the institutions they work in, and also focus on youth that have demonstrated resilience in navigating through the so-called discrimination, exclusion, injustice that characterizes our political regimes. We need to focus on that and bring them into the play, give them space on the table to contribute to the growth of this country. Those that are distracting us are very few.
Thank you so much. We'd like to say that was Dr. Ashad, of course, sharing with us much about the report that they've actually been working on.